Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Spotlight event this afternoon as we talk about our Pollyanna curriculum and our anti-racist efforts here at La Scuola. I want to begin, my name is Nicole Leon. I'm the Director of Admissions of this amazing school. And before we move on in our agenda, I just want to begin by just acknowledging that La Scuola sits on the ground of Ohlone people. Bay Area was built on the ground of the Ohlone people, and it is with respect that we honor and acknowledge that before we begin this session. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, we are going to begin with Sally Peterson, our Director of Teaching and Learning.
Hi. Hello to everyone. It's nice to see you and happy Friday. Thanks for joining us during your lunchtime. I just want to speak a little bit about really about diversity, equity, inclusion, and it's it's so valued and as a priority for La Scuola, and it has always been from the first years. And we have a strategic, a 5-year strategic plan, and we're in the coming to the end of it. So 2018 to 2023. And one of the 5 priorities for this strategic plan is centered on diversity, equity, inclusion, and specifically our community, and specifically to preserve our unique multiculturalism that already exists at La Scuola, and to further diversity, inclusivity, and equity within our community. And with that in mind, there has been a committee that was formed and has been, as you can see from these verbs about valuing what we reject, what we affirm, what we embrace, and what we strive, these are all action verbs. And the committee work is a combined effort of our board chair, a parent who has been actively involved in her own community work, as well as on this committee. And we have identified and have a role at La Scuola that is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Director, in addition to faculty and parents involved. And we have many events throughout the year, and you'll be seeing further on Melina Madrigal. She's our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, in addition to her role as a middle school humanities teacher. She'll be speaking to our diversity, equity, inclusion goals and the kind of the 360 view of how we're ensuring that it's furthered and in our community. So with that, we can move forward.
So I want to just briefly talk to this. And if you've been to any of our other information sessions in the most recent past, in the last few weeks, you've heard me speak on our student diversity statistics. It is like Sally said, it's a goal. It is part of our strategic plan, and it is very intentional. So it is at top of mind for all of us. Currently, our families make up 30% of our families are non-white. And there's a number of identifications or cultures or that are represented within our community. And then sliding scale tuition, 28% of our families are on sliding scale tuition. And that is something that we are really proud of, because we do strive to build and maintain a inclusive school for our children and families. There are 34 languages spoken within our La Scuola community. And if you've been on a tour with me and Paula, you heard us speak of that many times. We're very proud of that. And it's a beautiful piece of who we are. And then 4% of our students are from the LGBTQ communities, and we are represented across 38 different zip codes in the Bay Area. So we're not stopping at these numbers. We are continuing to grow and again, with the goal in mind to be equitable, inclusive, and really responsive to the diverse makeup of the Bay Area in which we live. I am passing this on to Melina, who is here, and she is going to take us through our DEI goals.
Buongiorno a tutti. Good morning, everybody. I'm Melina Madrigal. I'm the director of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program here at the Scuola. Thank you, Nicole, for passing the parola, as we say. Our overview of our DEI goals, I kind of want to give an overview of these broad strokes of how DEI fits into our daily life. At the Scuola, we definitely understand and believe that the quality and the understanding and the knowledge of the teachers is essential to be able to pass that down to our students. So we really emphasize a great deal of training, and that comes in the form of internal professional developments, external. We also are looking at how to educate our entire community, right? The partnership that we have with families in this journey of learning is essential. So we also provide parent education series where we lead similar conversations around topics that we also seek to illuminate our staff and faculty on. We also last year implemented for the first time, and we'll be repeating it again this year, as a part of our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, we implemented the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge, which is really, really wonderful. And that'll be happening again in the new year, right after the holidays. And then moving on to our curriculum, a couple of years ago, we implemented the Pollyanna racial literacy curriculum, and that is a education continuum from kindergarten through 8th grade, where we provide the knowledge, historical knowledge, the right language, understanding, looking through at our history and our learning through a racial lens, really. And that's been wonderful. We've seen how it's changed the dialogue at school, how it's changed interactions and understanding, really on one of our transdisciplinary themes of who we are in this world and how the world works. It's been a really fundamental piece of our curriculum, and we're excited to present it. I'll be talking a little bit more in depth about it later in the presentation. We also have faculty and staff affinity groups. We have the Gender and Sexuality Alliance in the middle school, which is run by a student. We actually have a student DEI coordinator who is absolutely phenomenal. So that's really, really strengthened the community bonds and interest around these important topics. In terms of our communication, we have regular sending out a newsletter every month. We're really actively trying to incorporate, in our educational approach, really trying to make real life connections. So anything that's happening in the news, or also looking at different holidays and observances, historical commemorations, how we can bring that learning into our classrooms every day or connect it with what we're doing. So I send out, the DEI department sends out an email kind of outlining what the month ahead looks like and how we could possibly make connections on some important DEI related topics. Yes, okay, so for our community engagement, this is something that we've just been raring. We're new to the mission a couple of years ago, and then, with the pandemic happening, that really put us at a halt, basically, for our community engagement. But we're seeing that some of the restrictions are now, lessening, and so that hopefully in the next year we'll be able to really establish some strong roots in our community and partnerships and understand how best to serve our community. Okay. And then another one of our goals is always to look at our student population, our faculty population, and our staff and board. We know that we can always improve and find ways to really understand what voices are not being heard, what voices are not present, and trying to find ways to bring in voices, make sure we're having a really cohesive and inclusive community where we're understanding the needs, especially of those most vulnerable. We also are continuing to focus on inclusion and connection across our campuses. Right now we have 3 campuses, which is about to come into 2, which we're all very excited about. We will have the Mission campus as well as our preschool campus, and we are in strong connection with them, working with the director of the pre-K, and then also we have a lovely DEI coordinator over at the pre-K. So there's a lot of unity and a lot of understanding about what we're doing across campuses as a united school. Okay, next slide. All right, this is an example. So this is one thing that has been really transformative for the way we approach our work. We created a DEI calendar where it's a resource for teachers, where we have gone through the calendar and really highlighted important events, important cultural, religious, LGBTQ related events and dates that we want to make sure we are celebrating, we are recognizing in our community. So we have some events that are school-wide where we have, and they're great, like these school-wide celebrations where we go out, it's like a festival, you know, so that would be like Lunar New Year, Carnavale. We also, I do want a Diwali we just celebrated, which is beautiful, and Dia de los Muertos is another one. So those are really school-wide celebrations. I also want to take a minute to tell you about Pride Day, which is in recognition. This is a La Scuola made holiday tradition, and we implemented it last year, and it was really made because we wanted, for Pride Month, you know, school lets out the first couple of days of June, and we really didn't want to let that opportunity of celebrating Pride pass us by. So we decided to make a Pride Day, which is June 1st. And last year was our first year. It was a beautiful event of you know, it was a historical assembly on how Pride came to be, the Stonewall riots, as well as a bunch of different activities to bring that awareness and understanding of what the what is most important to the LGBTQ community right now. Okay, next slide. Okay, and so these are just, it's a glimpse of how we've organized our calendar. So like I said, you know, we have these school-wide festival level celebrations, and then we have other events that we are celebrating school-wide as well, but they look a little bit different. This will look like either through an assembly or through classroom lessons. But the expectation is that teachers we're meeting these, I don't want to call them objectives, but we're incorporating these really important themes into our work and historical knowledge, providing that for our students. So this is a little understanding. And obviously these, like, as you can see under ability and mental health, these look different depending on what grade we're talking about. Everything's approached with an age appropriate manner. So something like suicide prevention is something definitely we've talked about in the middle school, but just keeping in mind that these are not for every grade necessarily, but are approached with sensitivity and understanding for age appropriateness. Next slide, please. Okay, anti-racism at La Scuola. So in light of, you know, recent events, and even before that, honestly, we had been working, we were implementing the racial literacy curriculum. We were seeing these needs, understanding our role as in a private school, independent school institution, our role, what we play in this, understanding of what it means to be an anti-racist society and how to make our community specifically more anti-racist. And what I love about this, I'm not going to read it to you. This is our anti-racist statement. This is an excerpt from it. But what I really loved about this is as we gathered around and thought about what does it mean to be an anti-racist school? What does that look like? You know, we're a Reggio school. What does that look like, feel like, sound like? And what I loved about this is we definitely had, you know, our amazing board members, our DEI committee members sit down and really discuss, myself included, what our anti-racist statement looks like. But the heart of our school is our students. And that's where you see, you know, our identity. This is who we are. And so working with the middle school students, we sat with them, my students specifically, I also teach in the humanities department, what that looks like for young people. So I had my students actually compose an anti-racist statement as well. And it's something that we're very keen to understand, that it is, that we all have a responsibility to understand where we've internalized racism, how it manifests, and looking through our curriculum, looking through our social dynamics, our interactions, looking through our staffing, looking through our community dialogue, that all of these facets are, it's pervasive. And so we need to be conscious and aware at all times of where this is peaking up and how we can fight it best. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a brief overview. So the Pollyanna Racial Literacy Curriculum was developed in 2015, and it's wonderful. They received, so the Monique Vogelsang and Casper Calderola. Casper Calderola is the founder of Pollyanna, and they received a grant to make this free and accessible for anyone who wants it. So you can literally go to the website and download it. And it's a full curriculum that many of us from a certain age onward did not receive, and it feels extremely empowering and wonderful to be able to teach our young people these lessons so young. Starting in preschool. So we actually have taken some lessons and adapted them to a preschool level. The curriculum officially starts in kindergarten, moving through 8th grade. And you'll see through the different topics that it starts in an inward, looking inward at the self-identity and the individual, looking at why is it that we look different? Like, why do we have different skin colors? This is a celebration of skin colors. So it really starts, the fundamentals to start with this celebration of identity to set the foundation as we move on and have to talk about some pretty hard subjects. And then it looks like, what I like about it too, that it ebbs and flows from looking inward, who you are, and then looking outward, how does that fit into the community? Who are you as a member of this community? And the Pollyanna Racial Literacy Curriculum, it was actually quite easy to implement into our existing curriculum because it's been so carefully designed to align with Common Core standards and objectives, so that the same topics that we were already teaching, geography, migration, are still there, that we're simply shifting a bit what the lens we're looking at. So a racial justice lens. And so for instance, when slavery, the topic of slavery is introduced in 3rd grade, we're also shifting the representation of voice, that slavery is introduced in 3rd grade from the perspective of a young enslaved individual. And so we hear directly from that person. So it's really something very beautifully different and very important the way this is shifted, compared to how many of us have learned / not learned at all. And then you see through, when you get to the 3rd through 5th grade, you start into looking at slavery, looking at how geographical luck rather than white superiority gave many civilizations a head start, depending on just where they happen to be. We look at immigration, especially with our identity as, for many of us as US citizens, how does the US is a nation based or built on immigration. And then finally, when we get to the 6th and 8th grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th, we're really shifting over to racism in society on a structural, institutional level. I just did the 7th grade unit on race, what is race, how science, society, and media misrepresent. It's a fascinating unit where students really, what I love about these is really developing critical thinking skills. So where you watched a piece of media, we're looking at Birth of a Nation, we're looking at different misrepresentations of race and racist representations throughout our society, and it really clicks with the students, and they really begin to see the world in a new way and understanding how to critically analyze it in a powerful way, moving towards anti-racism. And then finally, in the 8th grade, we look at institutional racism with systemic inequality, specifically looking at mass incarceration. Next slide, please. Okay, I believe this is Matthew. Is Matthew here? We happen to be, this was the time we were actually having a goodbye circle for one of our most beloved employees. It's her last day today. I'll go ahead and read what he was going to talk about, the pre-K, and hopefully he'll jump on here in the morning. He's also an amazing guitarist, and so he's out sharing his talents with our community. But our preschool anti-bias approach. To be able to support fully the positive identity development of children, we as adults in their lives must examine and understand our own identity. We have to understand the core social identity categories of gender, racial identity, skin color, culture, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, family structure, and ableness. Katie Kissinger, Anti-Bias Education in the Early Childhood Classroom. The preschool has done a lot of work around this, and their lessons are amazing. I've been able to witness, I think there's actually might be a slide later about, how the preschool approaches anti-racism, how it approaches studying gender And we just had, October was LGBTQ History Month, so there were a lot of conversations, and I know I put a slide about that in there later. So let's go to the next slide, and there you go, okay. So Hispanic Heritage Celebration in the preschool. I'm going to read it to you. It says, this week we continue celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month with a special asamblea. Otilia Mirabel's mom has read Island Born, which tells the story of Lola, a Dominican girl looking for memories of her country of origin. Otilia also brought typical biscuits, the polvorones dominicanos, which the children were able to take home to try. We really, this is one of the best things when we have Dia de los Muertos, we have Hispanic Heritage, to bring in members of our community who can speak authentically to their experiences is one of the greatest things I think we do as a community to really involve parents to bring different perspectives. You know, we are open to the world as an international school, and so making sure we keep that international perspective and not a US focused or white focused. Centricism is key to what we do in our classrooms. Next slide, please.
Okay, so I can
go
go ahead and hop on to this.
A lot. Great. Thank you, Sally.
No, give you a breather. Yeah, no, it's great. And yeah, thank you. And Melina, thank you for all these explanations. And I just wanted to dovetail when Melina was speaking about the Pollyanna curriculum. There is a kind of what they attach with their name is they say it's both honest and optimistic. So the curriculum, you know, as educators, we have such optimism in the children, and we know we have some histories to discuss and very challenging topics, as Melina had said. And at the same time, we have the optimism that we can broach these and children can participate in the dialogue and continue to move forward and create change in their immediate community and our broader community. And here's, we're looking into the kindergarten, and there's Matthew in the photo, and he'll be here possibly to speak to it. But in the preschool and in the elementary, we are an IB accredited school. And so we follow a primary years program, so the International Baccalaureate program, and the middle years program as well in the middle school. And so the curriculum or the program is set up as transdisciplinary. So students will be looking at a particular central idea through the lenses of all the different disciplines. And in this case, the kindergartners are currently exploring where they are in place and time. And as part of the inquiry, their question was, you know, who was here before us, you know, earlier on, you know, 50, 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago. And in the process, they have been learning about and developing research questions on the Ohlone indigenous group. And in this, so as they're reading stories and they're researching and they're drawing and they're writing in kindergarten, they're also part of one of our concepts is making connections. And so what you'll see on the right are the result of dialogue around our school values. And we have 4 tenets of respect, empathy, collaboration, and responsibility. And their research into the 7 values of the Ohlone. And they've made the connections. So La Scuola's value of respect is they found a connection to the Ohlone value of, you know, respecting others and treat others respectfully. So here are 5 and 6-year-olds kind of spanning this timeline to bring together present day with the past histories. And they are actively a part of this with the educators there to guide them. Okay. Back to you, Melina.
So we wanted to provide, thank you, Sally. We wanted to provide a few examples of what this looks like, how these ideas play out in the classroom and in our learning. So as Sally said, this is an example from one of our elementary classrooms discussing land acknowledgement, understanding exactly what was here before. I actually had the pleasure of working in the third grade classroom yesterday, and I was just, and I loved it. I love whenever it's not, when I have those moments to actually go into, across campuses and see the work in action, it is just, it's the best. I walked in and the students are studying the Sioux and Apache tribes and what life was like, how they lived, really understanding history. And, as a hands-on inquiry school, they were making dream catchers, doing a study into that, inquiring into daily life and making representations in the classroom. The whole classroom was transformed into another world, and it was quite a beautiful serendipity to walk into. Next slide, please. This is an example, so from my middle school, where we actually, in talking about, especially when we were looking at the 7th grade curriculum, this is from our 7th graders, looking at what is race and looking through our history and the civil rights movement. And this was a prompt that we did asking students to imagine what Martin Luther King would say today. This was specifically after the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and looking at what he would say. And with today, with the Rittenhouse conviction, I'm sure it's definitely sitting very heavy with many of us here, and just looking at where we're at today. So this was quite an interesting prompt, and the students I was really proud of their work in demonstrating their understanding, and through a historical lens as well, of what does progress really mean, and have we made progress, and if so, what does that really look like for us? So this was a really great prompt that I enjoyed working with my middle schoolers. And then the next slide, if you don't mind, is making a timeline. So this is one of our, and this was actually done, this was started in remote learning. So using our digital skills, this is a Padlet, which is wonderful. And we made a timeline so students can really have clarity of understanding. This was also from our reading. We read the young adult version of White Rage called We Are Not Yet Equal, so that students really got to see this idea of like how progress is pummeled by racism, by a backlash of rage. So like looking through history at these two forces of justice and injustice on a parallel track in our society. Okay, next slide, please. And then DEI curriculum branching out from anti-racism and racial studies, looking also, this is a beautiful one. This is our 4th graders, I believe, last year, talking about COVID and what that means in terms of equity. And students this was their signs and symbols unit. So they were talking about how important it is to make signs in multiple languages around the school to help people from different cultures and understanding. That's from Vesper. And I think it would be smart to take pictures of the safety agreements so that we can also be thoughtful of people who don't know how to read, or maybe don't read in any of the language that we wrote it in. So students are really encouraged to think about how we can be inclusive, and is anybody missing here, and how can we make sure everybody is reached, So that was a wonderful unit that the students took a lot of ownership over and pride in. Next slide, please. Okay, and then this is, so one of if we go back to our DEI calendar, when I was talking about that, International Women's Day in March is a very important event for us at the Scuola. And this is, talking about these topics, teaching about equity and equality for the sexes. This is one example of one of the 4th grade class looking at women's suffrage in the 19th Amendment. And I'm going to quote Livy here. She says, "It's crazy to think that half of the world is female and still half of the world can't or hasn't participated in politics. Hopefully that changes now." As we know, Kamala right now, I think, is the first time we officially have a female in technical presidential power as Biden undergoes an operation right now. But it was wonderful for the students when they kind of the light turns on and they get these aha moments of understanding how much work we need to do on the road of justice. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this was pre-pandemic, and this was one of our really exciting initiatives where we had just moved into the Mission campus. And so we were really looking for opportunities to understand how, as the newbies in the hood, how we can really reach out and serve, what can we do? So we made contact with the Bethany Senior Center just around the corner. And this was coming up right on Valentine's Day. So the students came up with the idea to interview these wonderful, beautiful seniors with all of their experience about what is the meaning of love? Like, what does love really look like? And, we didn't quite know what to expect. And we showed up, and the students, I mean, we were there for hours, and people were telling their life stories, and it brought so much joy. And I was just walking around, some students made brownies, and I'm just watching it, little couples, the students and aging individuals sharing so much information and just this fascination. It was really beautiful. And we really hope that this is the kind of project initiative that we can engage in again as COVID becomes a more manageable presence. Okay, so our LGBTQIA and gender identity exploration. Also, happy Transgender Awareness Week, everybody. It is this week. It's actually Transgender Awareness Month in San Francisco. And we've been having conversations in classrooms in the middle school and beyond, in the pre-K, in the elementary school. These are really important topics for us, and we really are focused on having a proactive rather than reactive approach in terms of how we understand gender and LGBTQ history as well. So we have, what you're seeing right now on this slide, we have a partnership with the LGBT Center out of Los Angeles. It is a campaign called Out for Safe Schools, and actually, so I have mine on. And what this is a recognition that much of the harassment and discrimination against individuals in the LGBTQ community happen in unstructured moments. So when we're out on the yard, or when we're passing in halls, or what have you. So this is a very symbolic campaign that every teacher who identifies as an ally, which I'm happy to report every teacher here has this on, is marking themselves as a safe ally for students. It's really, it's not to be underestimated how the power of symbolism and this kind of presence. It's really been remarkable in terms of what I've heard students comment on, and just seeing that daily, knowing that they're in a safe space, has been wonderful for our community. So, and on the back we have some tips for how to be a better ally in terms of how you use your language, reminding us of our own gender stereotypes and how to combat them, as well as some resources. Next slide, please. Okay, this is wonderful. So this is actually, in the picture, you're seeing Stefano, who is absolutely lovely. He is our DEI coordinator in the preschool. And so this is recent. This is from October, LGBTQIA+ History Month. And I used to work in the preschool, and I just want to say the conversations that you have are so beautiful. And as a Rego school, we're all about documentation as well. So the teachers have done a fabulous job of recording the comments. Stefano had chosen a book that talks about a boy that loves painting his nails all different colors. So here's some of the comments. And actually, I sat on this slide for at least 5 minutes. I was so sad I had to cut, so I couldn't make it all of it. But the whole conversation was just really, really beautiful. But you can see, when we talk about racism, when we talk about gender and sexuality identities, it's so important and so empowering as an educator. Already at 2 and 3, students have biases. They've already been learning what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl. So when we get in there and actually teach explicitly to these things and create an understanding, it's fundamentally important for all of society that to remove ourselves from these boxes and understand that identity is much more than a gender label, but it's about the unique individual experience and the freedom to express that. So this was great. And so the conversation moved from talking about, this is a book on nail polish, and Suki says, the boys were trying to say only girls can have nail polish, but boys and girls can have nail polish. And Stefano says, well, why do you think boys said only girls can have nail polish? Because it's beautiful on them and on boys too. And so the students really like, this is how we approach our learning, where we bring the knowledge out of students, where we ask a lot of questions and get them thinking. And Stefano put this into place for him, where then he moves to talk about dresses and asks in the class, you know, does anybody like dresses? And boys and girls are raising their hands, and just really wonderful work that they're doing in the pre-K there. Next slide, please. Okay, I think I'm passing that. Yeah, thanks so much, everybody.
Oh yeah, thank you, Melina. So incredibly much, and just there's so many aspects that we can continue to talk about and go really deep in, and thank you again. Wow. I'll speak really briefly to learner diversity. La Scuola is an inclusive school as a Reggio, following the Reggio approach, as well as an IB school. On our staff, we have both learning specialists, so working with students with a range of learning strengths and needs and areas of growth and challenges and differences, as well as a social emotional learning specialist looking at and working with children around their own personal self-awareness, around social interactions, around developing responsible decisions. So together we work with teachers, they work with teachers to move all our efforts forward. We can go ahead to the next slide. So I really want to emphasize again what does it mean to be an inclusive classroom, and really ground it back into our Reggio roots. I attended in person at Reggio Emilia a few years ago, a session with a psychologist who works in the Reggio, preschool system. And so two things she brought out is that when the value of the environment and the high importance of the environment. So when we can be an inclusive classroom, so we're including students that may have, students that are encountering physical obstacles, physical hurdles, medical or cognitive, learning differences. We are creating an environment where everyone can work together and we can respect everyone's superpowers and their needs. And with that environment, the classroom is set up for that. And they found in neuroscience, having an environment that is inclusive, it's really setting up every child in their learning. So again, it's around the learning setting. And so every child can learn to their maximum. And then there's the one other aspect of the Reggio, because I know our timing is tight, is that as this woman, Ivana Sanchini, was saying at this talk, she said, it is not by chance that at Reggio, we decided to introduce 100 languages. So this is really early on, as children with special rights may not have access to a verbal communication. And the 100 languages in at La Scuola is it's in the first phrase of our anti-racism statement. So again, we want to come back because we know we believe in expression and the ideas of the children, and we believe they need to be expressed in different ways, that we won't express them all the same way. And that really carries over into learning, whether it's the mathematics or in a language as well. We are looking for these different forms of expression so we can move that learning and their confidence forward. I think
Grazie, Sally. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here because I know Matthew is here and so is Valentina. And I know we've just got a few minutes, but I wanted to give some space for Matthew if you wanted to just introduce yourself and say a few words, as well as Vale.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. I first and foremost, want to apologize for my tardiness. We had an event here at school that went a little over, but we were paying our respects to a staff member who was leaving us. So we were there till the end to show our gratitude. So thank you for having your patience. If you had any questions around the kindergarten program and our DEI did anybody speak to you yet? I'm kind of coming in here out of.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Spoke
great.
to your beautiful inquiry, Matthew, with your
Great.
team.
Okay. Yeah, and so in kindergarten, and I was able to catch a little bit about what we were saying about the preschool. I used to work at the preschool for a number of years. So again, seeing that program, how it flows kind of seamlessly into the kindergarten program, where they're, the maturity is there on a different level. They're able to kind of go into specific conversations. I mean, like Melina said, they're very aware of differences in people from before they can speak. So you can imagine by the time they've been speaking for years and observing the world around us, they have a lot to say by the time they get to kindergarten, a lot to share in class. So again, seeing the environment always as a third teacher, we always want to keep that, keeping our books, making sure our stories that we are talking about are being incredibly inclusive to people from a vast variety of cultures and backgrounds. We do use a lot of our, the national holidays that we have on our calendars. For example, I mean, just Thanksgiving alone right now, to kind of speak to what we're talking about in class, we use that as pivot points to open discussions around Indigenous peoples and kind of the past, our unit on the past really aligns with that too. So we have these moments where our curriculum align with national holidays going on. We just use those as opportunities to open discussion, little projects based around them. So it flows in a natural way. So it's great to see how it unfolds in kindergarten and then into the upper grades as well. I have all the time in the world right now for any questions too. So if there's a Q&A at the end, I'm here for you.
Grazie, Matthew. And Vale is here.
Ciao, I just wanted to say hello to everyone. Thank you so much for joining at this very, very special spotlight event. I was also participating in the same goodbye and Matthew was participating in. I'm super thankful for Melina coming to this meeting. She had to leave the event early. This is really important work that we do here at La Scuola, and I think the one thing I can promise you as the leader of the school is the work we do here is really authentic. And I mean, a lot of organizations approach the DEI matter in different ways, but I think what has been unique for us from the beginning is that we are in conversation with one another, we are in conversation with our parents, and we're honest with each other, and we continue to the work gets more and better every year, and it's at all levels. This also came from the board, so I think it's really a school-wide collaboration. So thank you for being here, because it's important that you're part of this conversation and know about the work, the great work that happens in the classroom every day. Last, very quickly, teachers go above and beyond at La Scuola always, but they also participate in these events, and so I'm very thankful for the participation of the faculty and everyone. Grazie.
Grazie, Vale. Are there any questions from any of our families?
We're a small group here, so feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand. And also I wanted to say that we will be sending this presentation. There was a lot of information there, so you can read it later at your leisure. But yeah, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat or raise your hand or mute yourself, whether you prefer.
None? That's okay. We're a shy group. Okay. Well, I really do. I speak on behalf of Sally and Paula and Vale and Matthew and Melina. We are grateful that you spent your afternoon with us. This is important work to all of us, and we really appreciate you learning more about it. We are here for any questions that you may have. I see familiar faces and names here, so you know how to find Paula and I via email or phone call, and we are here for you if you have further questions as you continue on this journey of learning more about La Scuola.
Grazie mille.
Okay. Ciao.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.